son, where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. Oh, yeah. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
All right, welcome back, folks. We are once again here with the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast, and today we have an extra special guest, a legend in multiple tracks of the entertainment industry, producer, engineer, and live event entertainment expert, Mr. Josh Gannet.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
The crowd went wild.
I love the name of your podcast, by the way.
I was trying to think of a thing that sounded kind of like a scam, but isn't a scam. And Totally Legitimate Business just sounds like, a little too nebulous for anyone to take seriously.
Totally legitimate podcast name.
Yes. Exactly, dude.
Yes, for sure.
I want to thank you, first of all, for coming on the show. We've met a lot of interesting people, but one of the things I wanted to do with this whole thing is showcase the people that actually make the fucking sausage. There's so many different people involved in bringing people entertainment these days. For sure. And as somebody who's been involved in the back end myself and have consistently been overlooked for credit, I kind of want to make it a point to give credit where credit is due. And we were just briefly talking beforehand, but you have a very unique perspective of the entertainment industry, because not only do you operate at the highest levels in live event production, but you also operate at the highest levels of audio production. And one of the things I've always loved about getting to work with you is knowing that in live events is knowing that, man, I'm not the only person who's trying to pursue something else. And truly, like, your work ethic, amongst all the people that we work with who have very high work ethics, your work ethic is really kind of unmatched.
Man, thank you so much. I appreciate it. But, thank you for having me, first of all. But I think I really appreciate that.
The good way to start here is just kind of like give people a quick introduction to who you are, what you do, and then we'll kind of break out into the many stories that we have.
Sure. Well, I mean, you did a pretty good job of that, but I'm Josh Gannet. I work, as you said, in live production, usually in the artist relations area for a lot of the festivals. I've worked in other areas of live production as a tour manager, as just a production assistant, as a merch person. Usually, if I'm doing merch, that's as a tour manager / merch person. And a bunch of different areas in live production. And then in the studio, I'm predominantly a mixing and recording engineer, more mixing than recording these days, but both. And I do production as well. I work on pretty much any record that makes me excited to work on it, that I get the opportunity to go for. I'm into it regardless of the genre. I'm more well known, I guess, for working in hip hop. But yeah, I just like to keep busy. And as you were saying about the work side of things, if I'm not spending time with my family, then there's nothing else I'd rather be doing than working and being creative and just trying to help in the creative process.
Yeah, I love that. I think that the smartest spot for us to kind of dig in is we've worked a million fucking shows together, and we get to hang for what we get to hang at behind stage. Like, it's been passing. We'll get to talk for a few minutes, but we're there working, so we're not there to hang out. And I've never really heard the story of how you get involved in the entertainment business. So if we could go back to the very beginning, which came first, live events or audio production, and how did you get into that?
Well, so I guess kind of live events, but not on a professional level. I mean, I get into the entertainment business as being a dirty hard rock kid in a 3-piece hard rock band. You can't see it's on the other side of the camera, but there's 30 guitars sitting on the other side here. I was in a hard rock band, 3-piece hard rock band in high school. And, we did a ton of playing out and a lot of shows that way, and linked up with other groups, and we would play in other people's events and throw our own events, and just kind of involved in that area. from there, I'll try and make it the shorter version. But I used to play a lot of guitar with just like local buddies of mine who were rappers, and I would play a beat and they would kind of cipher around, and I would just play the beat on a loop. So from that, my name got passed around to a hip hop production company, hip hop label out of Jersey. And so I went out there and was doing a lot of session work as a guitar player. So just spending a lot more time in the studio. My band had done our own album that was self-produced, and then there was another band that heard our album and asked if I'd be willing to produce their album. And at that point, I was kind of like, I had no idea what a producer technically was. To me, it was just, it's, you want my opinion on your album? I've never tried that for anyone else's stuff, but if there's one thing I have a lot of, it's certainly opinions. So I was like, sure, I'll give it a shot. Let's just work out of the studio that I had done my most recent record in, that I was comfortable with the engineer. I didn't know any of the technical terms, but I knew that the engineer kind of understood the way I was explaining my ideas for my project. So I said, if we can do it there, then I have a level of comfort that I can get my ideas across. So I did that album with them, and it turned out good. And they passed, from that, a couple other bands heard their album and then approached me to produce. So I ended up just spending a lot more time in the studio looking over engineers' shoulders. And at the same time, I was doing a lot of the guitar playing for the hip hop production company, like I mentioned. So I was just turned into pretty much a heavy studio rat real quickly.
Yeah.
And I was just always in the studio. And then eventually a buddy's band had asked me if I would, they had a cover band and they had written a couple of original songs they wanted to try and record. They asked if I'd be willing to record them. And I said, I don't know. I never tried to record. So I asked the studio owner of the place that I had just brought like 3 or 4 albums into if he minded if I brought a session in there, but that I acted as the engineer in the session. So he said, sure, go ahead. I rented the space and we do this session. And I don't think anyone was really expecting much, myself included. And then at the end of the session, everybody listened to it, including the studio owner, and was like, wow, this actually sounds pretty good. Now, I haven't listened to that in 100 years, so I don't know how good it actually was, or if it maybe just showed sparks of potential in there.
Sure. Yeah.
But so from there, he actually offered me a job managing the studio. Maybe within a month of that, the hip hop production company that I was doing this stuff with, they had bought a new studio, a bigger studio, a nicer space, that they also asked me if I'd be willing to manage their studio.
Damn.
So I went from just being a studio rat to managing 2 studios in a very, very short period of time. And, I'm a big believer in the way you get better at anything is being in the room. So I just ended up being in the room a whole lot. And that kind of was the start to my recording engineering career that took off from there. And as far as the live production stuff, getting into the pro end of that, it's actually my little cousin Mahina, who you may know, I'm not sure, but Mahina Gannet, she was one of the original people with, she actually worked for Superfly with when they were doing Bonnaroo very early on.
Sure.
Became very close friends while working at Superfly with Tom Russell, who then later started, as part of founders, started Govball. So she was the first head of artist relations for Govball. And she ended up needing a last minute, unexpected, extra golf cart driver. And it was like the day before the show, and she called me up. She said, I'm so sorry to ask you, but I need somebody that knows how to behave around artists and do the job well without being starstruck. She obviously knew I already had my career going in music. So I spent a lot of time around artists, and knew that I wouldn't kind of freak out with the fan side of things. So she asked if I could step in as a fill-in, and that went well. And then from there, I started getting offered jobs by other festivals, and you know how small of an industry it is. Your name gets passed around, and it gets passed around for good or bad. And fortunately, it got passed around to get me a couple extra jobs.
That's so wild how rapid your trajectory is. And it's like completely unexpected. You're just kind of pursuing your interest, and then all of a sudden you're like in the thick of it, trial by fire stuff.
Yeah, That's true. I mean, I guess in some ways it was really rapid. In other areas, it feels like it took forever. I mean, it's like they say, it's a lifetime of work to become an overnight success.
Right.
But the truth is, I still feel like I have so much of a long way to go to get anywhere near my goals. And where I eventually hope to be in terms of, the self-defined version of success. But yeah, I definitely got lucky. And I think that being in the room and putting yourself in a position that when the luck strikes, that you can handle it and rise to the challenge. I think that's really been where I was the most fortunate, just being prepared to, kind of step up to the plate. Even with the recording stuff, you never know who's going to call you for a session or to mix a record for them or to come to the studio. And if you get that call of somebody that you happen to be a big fan of, you want to be able to do the job well. I mean, there's nothing worse than getting the opportunity and just missing,
Yeah.
And I've certainly done a little bit of that in my career as well.
It's part of this for sure.
Yeah.
I'm interested, just like, so I get into audio engineering because I don't want to pay for my bands to record shit. I want to know how to do all this stuff myself for free. And it paid for itself a long time ago, simply for that. I didn't really start wanting to work with other people until I'd been kind of doing it myself for a while. But what, in terms of like just the recording or studio stuff, what do you think is the most exciting part of that to you? Or like, what is like the most, what aspect of that are you most passionate about that keeps you wanting to, learn more, get better, grow?
Yeah. I mean, the most exciting part about for me is helping create something that I know is gonna have the potential to matter to somebody and change somebody's day for the better, or make them feel like somebody else can relate to the way they're feeling, or get them excited for just something that helps be part of the soundtrack of somebody's life is amazing to me. And it's getting to help people that I was, I've been fortunate in my career that I work with a lot of people that I grew up as huge fans of. And, now a lot of those people have become very close friends and family to me. And getting to help somebody that I was a fan of on a musical level, then a fan of on a human level, helping them create the next chapter in their career, or helping them at a point where, as an artist, where they're more vulnerable and more exposed, being trusted in that to help them determine a direction of something that they can feel confident in, and just being able to express my creativity in a way that is a little, not much safer, but a little safer on my ego than being in front of the microphone.
Full display, right.
Yeah. So it's like you're still out there and you're still exposed as if, look, people are going to hear my work too, and they might hate it. But I like being able to help other people with their creativity, and just, I want to be able to be proud of the things that I do, and stuff that's going to make people enjoy hearing it, things that are going to make my family proud. Hopefully, I have young twins. Hopefully things that when they're older, they'll be able to check out and appreciate in a different way. Like, wow, that's cool. My dad helped make this record that, that I may care about,
I think I've always thought it was funny, like definitely seeing what I went to school just outside of Nashville. And when I was first getting into like the recording industry, it was all Nashville stuff. And I saw the mentality of recording is a little different there. It's very business, business.
Yes.
And obviously it's the epicenter of the music business. But what I always found funny was, big name producers, big name engineers, their kids when they were young, between like when they were sentient enough to realize what their parent did until about maybe 17 or 18, they didn't really give a shit.
No, not at all.
Yeah, whatever. I'm in the room with Jack White. Whatever. He's just a guy that shows up at my dad's house and we record.
Right.
What do you? Obviously, your twins are still pretty young, but like, what are you most excited to share with them when they get to the age where they can like appreciate, like, oh shit, my dad was doing a lot of really big time crazy stuff that maybe I didn't realize when I was a kid, but it's super cool now that I'm cognizant.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, well, to your point, like I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and to my nieces and nephews that are now a little bit older, it's like, for example, Redman, who I not only work with a lot, but is, that's like my brother. That we
You guys are
become
tight, yeah.
super close. Yeah, that's family to me. It's like even my nephew refers to him as Uncle Red. Not just
Nice.
my kids as well, but it's like my nephew is starting to get to an age where he's still pretty young, but he's getting to an age where he starts to see different things and understand a little bit more about pop culture, to where like he understands that Uncle Red was in a movie, and he understands that that's like something that's unique and
Right.
not the standard thing. My older nieces, a couple of them, they're very into music, and a lot of them have now started coming out to some of the shows we work on, and having them reach the age where they're excited about it and can kind of appreciate it. Whereas before it was, they didn't understand what I did, or necessarily give a shit when they did understand it, because it didn't really matter. Now they're at a point where it's like, if they talk about their favorite artist, there's a good chance that I'm friends with his tour manager or his engineer, or
have worked
whatever,
with them in some way.
or have worked with him or know him personally or have his phone number. You know what I mean? And that's happened a bunch of times. Even last summer, my nieces were at a concert and they hit me up like, "Oh, check out who we just saw." And I said, "Hang on one second." And I text the guy's tour manager, who's a buddy of mine. And then he goes and grabs them from their lawn seats and puts them front and center in the front of the show. And it's like the opportunity to have them be able to do that in front of their friends, and that they get to kind of be the hero that, took their friends from having a normal, awesome experience at a concert, and then just elevating it to something that none of them expected, and letting them kind of be the one to wear the badge. Like, yeah, I did that. I like that. So I'm excited for, shit, man, when it's my own kids, they're so young. I just hope that they're excited that, I'll put it like this. The thing that I want them to appreciate the most is having that knowledge that they don't have to follow what they're told is the right way to do things. That there's other paths, that you don't have to follow this is the only way you can provide a life for yourself. I want my kids to grow up understanding that if there's something you're passionate about and you care about, that you have the option, if it's something that you want to do, to find ways to make that elevated and do it in a more professional way, that you can actually sustain a life and a family out of those things, as long as you're willing to work really, really fucking hard and do it with a smile on your face. If you're willing to do that, then you don't have to, get a job at a big company and
pursue the mainstream path. Yeah.
Yeah, there's more ways to do it, and that if there's a different way you want to do it, I want them to have that knowledge. And hopefully, more than the records and shit like that, in the sense of being, oh, wow, my dad worked with this artist or on this record. I'd rather it more be an understanding that that if they find a different way that they want to do it, that they can do it, as long as they're willing to work hard.
What do you think is like this isn't like like, what do you hope they're most impressed by? What are you, of the records you've worked on, what are you most excited to share with them as they grow? They're obviously going to be into music. That's just like a foregone conclusion at this point. And that's, from my perspective, that's a benefit. Music to me has saved my life in so many different incalculable ways. What are the projects that you've worked on that you're most excited to share with them once they start to embrace the just being completely surrounded by music and big scale productions, big good shows and stuff?
Yeah. That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. There's a lot of things that I'm proud of that I've done already. I hope that I'm able to share the experiential things with them. Some of the bigger festivals that we work on together, those shows, or similar enough ones, if those particular ones aren't still in existence for whatever reason in another 15 to 20 years, that is going to be before my kids are at an age to really appreciate them. I'd love to be able to share the experiential things with them and know that they can see the way, as you put it, the way the sausage is made. Like, they can go behind the scenes, they can see the stage, they can see all the work, but I also want to be able to give them the experience of seeing that and then immediately seeing it from the other side as well. Because as you know, you watch enough shows from side stage, you quickly realize that we design these productions that the magic happens at the fourth wall. You know,
Yeah.
If you're standing side stage, even if it's your favorite band in the world,
The illusion is ruined. Yeah.
You're watching a guy like, you know, wrap cables and check patch points and somebody running to fix something. When you're standing in front of in the crowd, you know, you're with 50,000 other people that are having the time of their lives. That, you know, as far as recording projects that I've worked on, I worked on this Les Paul tribute album many years ago.
Sick.
That it had everybody on it, you know, a lot of people that were influenced by and friends of Les Paul. And Slash was on there. Keith Richards, we recorded for that. Steve Miller, we recorded for that. Jose Feliciano was in studio for that. Billy Gibbons recorded at his place and sent it in, but we did a video recording with him for the movie aspect of it. I'd love to share that with them, just because I really appreciate the music, and I think it's something that you know is very fulfilling music to listen to in a lot of ways for me. But just as much as I say that, like the most recent Redman release, the Muddy Waters 2 album, you know, I'm super proud of that. It's something that we put a ton of time and effort into, and I'd love to be able to share that with my kids also. I mean, like I said about the settings of music, enjoying that part of it, they're for wildly different settings.
Yeah.
But they both have their place. And, you know, I think that I'm just going to be proud to share all the things with them that I think are fun and exciting to me. And there's a lot of that, fortunately, where I get to work on a lot of things that I am a fan of. And I try really hard to work mostly on things that I'm a fan of. I try not to do too many things strictly for $1. And to me, a big part of the definition of freedom is the ability to say the word no.
Yep.
And I think no is a super powerful word that it took me a long time to realize how good that word can feel sometimes and how freeing that word is. So I like to work on things that I don't want to say no to. Albums that feel like a yes, it's usually the right decision to take those albums. Albums that, historically speaking, that I've been on the fence of, should I say no to this? And then I ended up saying yes. Traditionally, I probably should have said no to those albums. So, you know, I think, yeah, just most of the things that I've worked on will have a place of being excited to share that with them. And I'm excited to share the accolades with them also. I mean, again, the Redman album, the Muddy Waters 2 album, we hit #1 across all genres on the iTunes charts.
Hell yeah. Congratulations on that. That's amazing.
Thank you. And it's like the Wicked soundtrack was what we took the place of.
Hell yeah.
And Wicked, I'd imagine, is going to be something that they'll probably grow up being exposed to, and they may even learn the songs. They might be a fan of it. They might like the movie. Who knows? But I can tell them when they watch that at some point, when they're old enough to appreciate it, hey, you know, funny story about that thing. You know, the album I did with your Uncle Red around that same time took #1 over that. I think those things, not as a thing like, oh, look at daddy and how cool I am and how much I've done. More in the sense of, I think them understanding that helps keep things a little more in perspective, where they know that it's a real thing. It's an attainable thing.
It's touchable.
Yes, I grew up thinking that it was us and then it was they, you know, and like they have gold records and plaques on the walls and accolades and #1s and all these things. We can set up a little tour, a little concert and play 300-person clubs if we're lucky. But that's what we can, like, they do these other big things. And after reaching a certain point in my career, realizing that, wow, some people might look at me as they, you know, I want my kids to understand that it's all attainable, you know, and that's where I want them exposed to things. With that mentality, not just like, oh, check out what dad did, but more like, look, dad is not the most talented person in any room he's ever been in. And he is not the most intelligent person in the room, in any room he's ever been in, but he might be the hardest working. And that I'm willing to, and I don't even say that to say that other people aren't working as hard. I mean that to say that I'm willing to work as hard as anybody else on the project, and that I'm willing to acknowledge and try and make up for my areas of shortcomings by putting in the work to try and exceed in effort. And sometimes if you exceed enough in effort, you accidentally fuck around and learn some shit and get pretty good at it. And I think that's really kind of the secret weapon or the superpower. And that's the part that I'd like to most show them, because who the hell knows what they're going to be into when it's their time to choose paths in their lives. I just want them to know that whatever they're into, it's like, you're not going to substitute for working hard at it. That is just going to be something you have to do. But you can work your way into success, even if you look, something I say a lot is talent is almost as common as money, and money is really, really common. And it's hard to impress me with either of those two things, because they're so damn common. You being wealthy doesn't mean that you're a good person. You being talented doesn't mean you're a good person. What impresses me is what you choose to do with your money and what you choose to do with your talent. And both of those things, if you work behind them and put effort behind them, you can do super impressive things. And that's really where I want my kids to understand. Don't worry about talenting your way into something. Don't worry about, buying your way into something. Work your ass into a situation where you can exceed expectations that you've previously put on yourself, because you now realize that you can impress yourself with your achievements based strictly on your own efforts and the merits that you've built, not the things that were your natural given gifts being the only things you have. Because then those gifts become a limitation, you know, and then if I don't have that talent, now what am I going to do? And the talent plays a role, of course, but it's not in the top 5, not to me anyway. It's what are you going to do with that gift, and how does that align with your goals? So yeah, I think that's what I really hope they gather.
I love that. I love that perspective. I also think there's like a unique, like even me, I was completely ignorant to the fact that you come from a hard rock background. In fact, a lot of people
don't know that.
I met you when you were maybe tour managing a hard rock band, but I've only really known you as a hip hop producer. And I think there's like a certain level of humility that I find with people who are really passionate about music and even live events. Like live events is just an extension of music from my perspective. The only reason I start doing live events is so I can be around music more and like see really good, big, high level, big productions. But there's like this unique thing of all the people that say they love music and all the people that pursue music, people get really narrow-minded with what they're willing to listen to. And knowing that you come from a more hard rock background, but your love for music applies to all genres of music, it honestly makes a lot more make sense to me. That's why you're able to succeed at the levels that you are, is because you're passionate about the thing as a whole, instead of just this is kind of what you're saying about talent. Talent only, you might be the best metal producer. That's a niche. You just worked yourself into a niche that you can't break out of, because you're only you only listen to this and you only know how to make this music, as opposed to just understanding the core concepts of recording or production and understanding the subtleties genre to genre and knowing how to execute that.
Sure. So for me, it's just the passionate. I'm more passionate about the art, and the process. I love the process. I love, going through the steps and running into the roadblocks and figuring out creative paths around that roadblock or through the middle of it. The whole process is important to me. And like you said, it's not genre specific. I mean, the 2 albums that I mentioned as things that I'd want my kids to to hear that I've worked on that I'm proud of. One of them is
opposite sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, one of them is Redman, a notorious hip hop artist that's known for smoking weed and having funny punchlines and wild live shows and everything. And Les Paul, who was, the inventor of the electric guitar
and multi-track recording
to some people. Yeah. And multi-track recording to some people's, the way some people credit him. And like a complete jazz album, guitar jazz. And, for me, the genre doesn't matter. It's the, how does it make you feel? And that's not to say I like everything. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I don't like, but it's not just because I've X'd out this genre. I mean, when my wife was pregnant with my kids, with my twins, I, every night I would put headphones on her belly and play classical for them. And I already was a fan of classical, but I didn't listen to much of it on any sort of regular basis. But through that process, it just like got me listening to a lot more of that again and remembering how much I really appreciate some of the things that I hear in classical music. I mean, now genre lines are so blurred. It's, who's to say whether a record's a country album or a rock album or a folk album or a hip hop album. Sometimes, a lot of the best albums have elements of everything in them now. And hip hop is a borrowed, a genre that's used borrowed elements from the inception.
Yeah.
And it's just the way they take that, rock record or classical record or blues record that they're sampling and flip it into something else and put their unique creative spin on it that turns it into a hip hop record. So there's, to me, the genres are more divisive when you look at them in that sort of way as I'm not going to listen to this sort of thing. And you kind of take yourself out of hearing some and appreciating and enjoying some great music. I used to, when I was younger, I would say, I listen to everything except country. But then I realized how many country songs I actually liked a lot.
Country music. Yeah, there's some good stuff out there.
And so I stopped saying that very early on because I realized I'm kind of lying here. I actually like a lot of country songs. And it's anything that I can, move to or feel excited to or just relate to or appreciate is something I'm going to enjoy listening to.
I completely agree with that. And I was that way really until I started working events. I was always this way, but it was really more for the bands that I was into. I was like, I'm not going to judge a band on their record. I want to see their live show. And I will pass judgment on how well they can reproduce whatever they recorded live. And, but it was still just within like rock, metal, like a very small pool. But, starting to work events and, I worked with Fish a lot and I don't like jam music at all, but watching them rehearse, I quickly appreciated their musicianship and I quickly began to appreciate the subtleties of what they were doing. And then taking that a step further and being like, damn, how many bands can sell out Madison Square Garden 2 weeks in a row?
Yeah. One night, let alone 2 weeks in a row.
No, seriously. And you start to appreciate things that maybe you thought didn't apply to you, but it's also the phrase real recognize real.
Sure.
So even if I don't like this music, I can recognize that person is a shredder musician.
Well, I mean, you mentioned a great example there. Like for me, Fish was one of those groups that applies to a couple things that I already said. First of all, they're one of the people I think of when I talk about the magic happening at the fourth wall. I've watched Fish from the side of the stage, and I've also seen them a million times as a kid in the audience. And there's a lot of magic. Experience. A lot of magic happens at the fourth wall. That's not to take anything away from them as players or what they're doing. It's just to say that when you're watching from the other perspective, you can see the other working elements that for somebody who's familiar with it and it's not like the excitement of seeing it for the first time and seeing all the people, it kind of pulls you out of it because it's not just, there's some guy part of the it's like there's James, it's different. It removes the star, I guess, in some level and makes it much more human that in some ways is really cool. In other ways takes away from the just pure elation of being in the moment of a show. Fish is a group that I was not a fan of at all when I heard their recordings from a buddy of mine that really wanted me to go to a show with him. And he made me listen to so many songs that I wasn't into it. And I liked other jammy music. They didn't do it for me. And eventually, after enough bothering me about it, I agreed to go to a show with him. And that first show changed everything about my opinion of them. I love that band. I love their live show. Part of that, though, as you know, what you're talking about with the live production aspect of it is there's a communal side of it. And this is not unique to Fish. It's just something that they exemplify in a lot of ways.
They really refined it for them. Yeah.
Yes. Like there's a community that cares and that they're there just to be there. There's a community that just goes to the parking lot and doesn't even make it into the show. 'Cause they just want to be around those like-minded people that may share similar vibes, similar energy, similar tastes and style. And the same thing applies across the board in hip hop as well, country music as well. You go to any of those parking lots or any of those concerts and you see similar enough attire, similar enough, mindsets about beliefs of the world, similar things that they appreciate. The communal aspect of music is the magic, man. And that's one of the things I appreciate about being in multiple areas of the entertainment industry is that I'm in the studio. I get to help with the creative part that really feeds a lot of the personal desire for, my own creative expression, let's say.
Yeah.
And also it fulfills that desire to feel good at something when I get to do work that impresses somebody that I grew up as a huge fan of, maybe. It also kills the ego in a lot of ways because you have to remember that you're a service industry and I'm just trying to help, it's the font size. Somebody else's name is written really big across the front of the record. My name's written if you happen to care enough to find it. And if you go out of your way and find a physical copy, if they even made one, my name's in some really, really tiny font somewhere on the inside that you got to search for. And only the people who really, really give a shit are going to ever know I exist. So it definitely, and there's also the opposite of people. Like there's times you can do something and somebody that you're a big fan of and even friends with might not like it at all. And they might just totally disagree, or they might just hate that decision, or the execution of it. And so it's very humbling in that case. But also you're in this studio with no windows. Studios traditionally do not have windows to the outside world. You're in a bubble and you're creating for yourself in a lot of ways there. Even if you think you're creating for the outside world, you're creating for yourself. And it's only once you're done with the creation, you've released it to the world, that they get to consume and weigh an opinion and give feedback and all that. The live events, I get to see human beings appreciating the work that we do in real time, immediately. Yeah. In some cases, I get to be at shows where artists are performing records that I've worked on with them. And then it's a whole, thing where I get to see them appreciating this work and this work all in real time. But, even if it's just any show, I mean, you know what it takes to put on a big production. And you mentioned Bonnaroo. Maybe that was before we actually got on that you mentioned that. But either way, we met at Bonnaroo and, that's a massive show. It takes a lot of moving parts. It takes a lot of people. It takes a lot of effort to make that thing work. And you go into the field and people would have no idea because they're just out there living their life, having the greatest time. And if that's the case, that they don't think about us at all, that means we did a great job. If they're thinking about the idiots that run this thing, that means there was some problem that they think we're the idiots and we failed in some regard. So yeah, I love the part about being able to be both in the creative world, but get windows to the world and
occasionally
and see,
some sunlight. Yeah.
Yes. And see like a real-time feedback of this is why I put all this effort into these things, is because people can actually enjoy it and appreciate it.
I've always known this about you, and I've always appreciated it about your perspective, is that you're one of the very few people
I mean, we work with a lot of really talented people, and we work with a lot of really talented people who also do creative music outside of live events. But you're one of the few people that has remained consistent in both of those worlds and really gets to see multiple layers, you know, the idea to the recorded thing, to the finished mixed product, to it being out in the world and then being performed in front of crowds. And it's just, it's just cool that like, I know a lot of people who are record producers. None of them go to live shows. They're rarely even invited by the artists to the live shows.
Sure.
And you like, you're operating at the top of both of these worlds, you know, sometimes.
I like to straddle the line.
I've always loved that. And one of the other things that you mentioned, Bonnaroo, I think this will be a good point to kind of bring up how we met. We met at a Bonnaroo. I'm pretty sure it was 2014, 2015. I had just started working in events. I had worked a couple Bonnaroos when I lived in Tennessee, and then I moved to New York. Dan Jones was like, come up here, we'll get you work.
Dan Jones, one of the greatest.
He would do that. And he got me in with Stephanie Yeager, which is how I get connected into Fish. And within like a month of me moving to New York, she was working for Haddon Hipsley, who was production coordinator for that whole event, like the man calling the shots. And she's like, why don't you come down and be one of our production assistants in that trailer? And that was crazy. I was there for every other time I'd done Bonnaroo was for a weekend. And this time I was there for the whole month. I saw all the stages come up. I stocked all those trailers with extension cords and cables so that all the band management, the band management had stuff to do. And it comes down to the show, right? So I've been there for 20 fucking days. And at this point, this whole place is my home. I'm freely walking wherever the hell I want to go. Nobody's telling me no. And that was great. I loved getting to like experience Bonnaroo from that perspective. But, you know, as the bands move in, security tightens up and you get like, especially with the bigger artists, you get these people show up for an hour and they're like, now this is our place, right?
Yes.
And I had run into a bunch of miserable fucking people at every stage who were dealing with that. So I can't remember what band you were working with, but it was a night that Meshuggah was playing. It was one of the side stages. It was Meshuggah, Guar, Mastodon, I think.
Yeah. That was my overnight on this tent.
There you go. Okay. So all I remember is going over to that stage to ask the stage manager if I could get my buddy side stage for Meshuggah, because he and I both just love Meshuggah. And I walk in the door and I see you and there's a band and the stage manager and they're like shuffling out money. And it's one of those scenarios where I open the door and everyone just turns around and looks at me. And I was like, I don't know if I should be here or not. But, and I'll never forget this. And this, I'm not even kidding you. This is one of the only reasons I continued to do events, because I've met some miserable fucking people, some people who have no real reason to be as miserable as they are in this industry, but they're just miserable people. And I've been chewed out a bajillion times for accidentally opening a door that I shouldn't have opened. But you came over and you're like, hey man, and you took me outside and you're like, this band's settling up. They're just dealing with money. They want to keep it closed while they're settling with money. Could you wait outside for a second? And I'll never forget that, because it was one of the most reasonable interactions I had with the people who came in for the event.
Right.
And
well, I'm glad I wasn't a dickhead and I left.
Dude, that was before I even knew you. That was before I knew that you did a bunch of work in New York. We eventually bump into each other later in New York.
Sure.
We're like, oh shit, what's up? But I'll never forget that, because it was just like a tiny bit of kindness and consideration that, from my perspective, was kind of absent in a lot of that world. And I'm not going to lie to you, it affected how I dealt with bands, and definitely how I dealt with people who were new to the industry, who were coming in. It 100% shaped that. Later, finding out that you're a part of the New York crew, none of that was a surprise, because Matt, Mo, Dakota, Dan, like literally the endless list of people that we work with, we're all like that. And you know, we're really fortunate that we get to work with those people. But I'll never forget that. Like,
Well,
and
thanks,
that's on
man.
some that's on some
glad
real shit.
Yeah, I'm glad I left a good impression. And like a little humility and kindness goes a long way. And I think it's something that's so easy to forget to do. I've been, not to pat myself on the back at all, but I've been fortunate enough to hear a couple of similar enough stories from other people that, or even in real time working. I remember I had one of my dedicated drivers on one of the shows I was working. I think the first time I heard it may have been at a Gov Ball, where she said, it's funny. I see everybody here like running around and like freaking out and they're going crazy. And a lot of them are having like issues at their stage and stuff. And she said, you just seem so calm. Like you don't really stress about any of this. And the stage is running so smooth. And I said that what I kind of realized when she made the comment, it was like a real time moment. Said, I've worked at a lot of music festivals. And at this point, it was even relatively early in my career. But as I've worked at music festivals, I've worked at film festivals. I even went with a homie of mine who's a farmer to a garlic festival.
Nice.
And the one
That
thing
must have
that I've
smelled
learned,
amazing.
yeah, it was amazing. But one of the things that I've learned in this is that when you tap the word festival onto the end of it, people get themselves a little bit more worked up sometimes, where they forget what it is we're doing a little bit. Like the festivals we do, like those are concerts. It's a big concert,
But
it has more moving parts than a club show, but it's a concert.
Yeah.
And the people in that concert, the tour managers know how to tour manage. The bands know how to perform their show. We know how to do our job, presumably, in putting on this show and helping facilitate what the bands need, and our side of it, or the tech teams facilitating what they need, whatever it may be. We know how to. Our teams know how to build the stage. They know how to build the infrastructure. We know how to make this thing work. Everybody knows how to do their job. The fans know how to come. They know how to party. They know how to watch the show. We all know how to do this. It's just a bigger concert. And the same holds true with the film festival. We worked at a film festival, and it's like, oh, when people come in and I was a theater manager for one of them, and they're instructing me on how to be the theater manager for this. It's like when people come in, this is how you want to sit them. And do you know how many times I've been to the movies? I think these people know how. I think the people know how to watch the movie. And
yeah.
Sure, there's some little small things you need to understand about how to work in specific situations, but there's small things. And the Garlic Festival, guess what, man? That's the farmer's market. It's
just
a
bigger.
Yeah. It's a bigger farmer's market that's a little garlic centric, but it's the farmer's market. I know how to do that. It's the same thing. And I think there's an excitement and a joy that we get out of that, hyped up part of it as well. And maybe a little bit of self-importance feeling and indulging in our egos a little in that area. But the truth is, I think that with very few exceptions, it's usually things that we know how to do if we've been on any level of this business, and a lot of things that may just be common sense, even if it's your first time through the door. I learned working in a summer camp kitchen about trying to do things a little bit more like how you're describing when you and I met. It's real easy to tell somebody, do this, and be fully within your
right to say so.
You're right as in your position to do that. Exactly. It's a lot nicer to show somebody how to do it, though. And instead of telling them, ask them, hey man, do you mind when you get a chance, can you do this? Or, hey buddy, just so you have a heads up, this is the scenario that we're in. It's fair enough to say, hey man, I'm sorry, not right now, and leave it at that. If you walked into the room when we're counting money and dealing with that, it's also fair enough to say to ourselves, hey assholes, why didn't we lock that door to make sure nobody could walk in if we're worried about somebody walking in? So what effort does it take to be a little bit human on it and give a conversation to explain, hey, this is the situation right now. No problem at all with you being back here. No problem at all helping you out. It's just going to have to wait a couple minutes till we're done with this and I can be a human being in it. I mean, hearing your response to it now, it mattered enough that you remember it now. And we met each other over a decade ago. And it's good to be able to have a positive impact on somebody, because it's real easy to be the memorable person for the other reason, as this asshole is the reason I never want to work one of these things again.
Especially in this industry, like especially in arts and entertainment, like there's just
there's
so
a lot of
many
curmudgeons.
egos and curmudgeons is a great word. Yeah.
Yes.
And it costs nothing. It costs nothing. That's the thing that's always pissed me off, is like, even when somebody has a crazy request or the crazy time constraint thing needs to happen, it's like, guys, we can make this happen. Nobody needs to be a dick. In fact, people being a dick, this makes it more difficult. Whatever thing we're trying to accomplish.
Right. And there's a little bit of reality that we need to give ourselves sometimes, that like, look, I can feed my ego and talk about how I'm helping run this massive thing, that I'm so important. But I can also be honest with myself and say, these guys are asking me, where's catering? Like, what am I really doing?
Yeah,
Fucking,
exactly.
I'm a map right now. I might be the most literal way that I can put what we do in artist relations specifically is like, I'm a switchboard operator, man. I'm call the phone, enough years ago before it was all automated. I'm the switchboard operator. I don't actually do much of anything as much as I help facilitate the things you need done. I don't necessarily have the things you need, but I know who to call on the radio that does. So yes, do I help run these things? Sure. Is it something that feeds my ego a little bit, just like anyone else's? Absolutely. But I also have a very large dose of reality mixed in there, that anybody who cares enough to pay attention to the details and knows how to have a good attitude and smile through sometimes stressful situations of people that do have very large egos and are very entitled and used to being catered to and coddled and all that, and making them feel good. If you can do that, you're fine. I mean, Bonnaroo's the best example in a lot of ways. It's obviously developed a lot more around there in more recent years, but Bonnaroo's still on a 700-acre farm in the middle of Tennessee.
In the middle of summer.
Yeah, in the middle of summer. There's only so, if you didn't advance it and we didn't already discuss it, there's only so many things we have access to that we can even help you with.
Right.
The big thing isn't always solving the problem for the people. The big thing is making them feel like you give a shit and that you care enough that you're trying your best to help them. Now, are there sometimes the assholes that want to go further and that's not enough for them and they expect things that are unrealistic and it was only due to their own mistake? Sure, those things happen, but it's actually way more uncommon than you'd imagine. Usually they kind of start hot like that because they're used to people who immediately toe the company line and give that to them, saying, oh, well, we can't do that if you didn't advance it, or this is what starting with the reasons why it can't happen, as opposed to saying the exact same thing, only with the positive spin on it of, I'll do my best. We're limited in where we're at and what we have access to and our resources. But I'm going to do my best and I'm going to try and make it happen for you. And then if, 9 times out of 10, if you can't make it happen, they're not upset with you because they know that you tried and they're on to another concern by then, or something that happened with the artist, or something that's on the technical side, or some other thing that matters, but they don't leave there feeling like, these people don't care.
You bring up a couple really good points, and I'm gonna try and trace back here because I had a really interesting question for you. Oh, here we go. In your time pursuing these things, what were the things that scared you or intimidated you the most? And I want to hear about from the perspective of recording, mixing, producing, and I also want to hear about the perspective of live events. But on the learning plateau curve of excelling in these industries, what are the things that scared you, and what were the good pieces of advice that you maybe were given along the way that inspired you to confront the fear, learn the thing, and advance?
Yeah, I guess the biggest fear is probably in some ways still the biggest fear. It's just failing the people that I care about, and disappointing the people that do believe in me. and not being able to prove wrong the people who maybe don't believe me. Although that, as I got older, became much less of a motivator.
Yeah.
Sure, when I was younger, though, that definitely was some part of it. But even then, it was a smaller part of it. More, it's about I was afraid of letting myself down, letting down people that I care about, that care about me, knowing that, not in the like hater type of way, but more in the concern type of way, that there are people who very much thought I was ruining my life by pursuing music and wondering how the hell I'm going to ever, you know, make a living and take care of myself and what are you going to do for money? That's usually, as a young person, when you talk about wanting to be involved in artistic endeavor,
Yeah.
that's usually the follow-up question. What are you going to do for money? Because they automatically assume that there's no money associated with that for 99% of the people. And they're right. But, you know, there is the opportunity to make things happen for yourself. If, like I said at the beginning, if you just work hard and look for opportunities and treat people right, opportunities come up. So yeah, I think failure, it was just my biggest fear and concern. And then especially failure in front of people that I'm a fan of. You know, I didn't want to be in the studio with Redman, for example, or Keith Richards or one of these guys and have them leave like, what the fuck am I doing with this guy? Like,
Yeah, right.
These guys don't know what they're doing. We need different guys. That's a scary thought. For the most part, I think I've been fortunate enough that I've had myself prepared enough that most of the opportunities like that came across my plate were things that I was able to execute at a level where I was proud of the job I did. You know, some of the best advice I got, I really don't know specifically. I think just not specific to the industry so much, just standard life advice that, you know, that we've all heard a million times about, just like put your head down and work, you know. It's not nobody's gonna do it for you.
Yeah.
Just
there
that
are
simple
no
idea.
shortcuts to the hard work. Yeah.
Right. And you know, we all know the outliers and your 10,000 hours and all that. And the thing is, there's shortcuts to a lot of things, but not the clock. And 10,000 hours, if that's what it takes to become a master at something, well, the quickest path to 10,000 hours takes you at least a bare minimum of 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
At that point, you know, there's no shorter amount of time. So we have to put in the time if that's the goal, is to get to 10,000 hours. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen tomorrow. You're walking into that knowing it's going to be a process. And I think being willing to go through that process and finding joy in the difficult parts of that process is important. You know, as far as advice goes, I think it's more just about like understanding the whys and giving yourself your own understandings for things that aren't explained. And what I mean by that is like if when I was working managing a commercial studio nearby where I live in Jersey, I one of my jobs was hiring and firing of interns and scheduling of interns and all that. And we had a lot of interns that would come through, and there's a really good recording program at the community college right near that studio as well. So we would have a lot of interns out of the school and just people in general who were interested in going into music. I would explain to people in their interview that, so you have a heads up, there's 3 main things that I'm going to judge you on. And it's not necessarily the 3 things that you're thinking. It's going to come down to how well you clean the bathroom. It's going to come down to how good you do getting the food order and your pot of coffee. Now, the reason I say those 3 things, you're not going to do those things every time you're in the studio. It's not like you come in here and you're here to clean the bathroom, get the food, and make the coffee, and get the hell out of here. But sometime in your first couple of times there, you're going to do each of those jobs, at least once in your first couple of visits. The reason is we all have to use the bathroom. I'm not too proud to clean the bathroom. I like a clean bathroom.
Yep.
I want to know that if I need to use the bathroom, I'm going to be comfortable going in there. It's going to be clean. I'm going to be able to look around and not be disgusted. I'm not going to walk in there thinking these people have no pride in their place. If there's ladies there that they're going to need to use it for maybe a changing room as well, that they're going to be comfortable in there. They're going to be comfortable using the toilet, whatever it may be. And if you don't do a good job, I'm not calling the cleaning people to come here and do it. I'm going to go and do it myself. I'm not too proud to clean the toilet, so you can't be too proud to do that either. There's going to be menial tasks that need to be done, whether it be this or any other one, that you need to be able to do them with a level of pride and care and attention to the detail, that if your favorite artist comes in here, that he can go and use the bathroom and you're not like, oh shit, I'm about to be embarrassed right here. He's not going to come out and say, damn, who cleaned this mess? The food order is something that seems simple, but it's like if you mess up the food order, sure, you can go back and fix it. But if the whole band's eating their food except for the drummer, and now they all finished their break and you're finally coming back with his sandwich, well, sure, he can either eat now and everybody can hang a little longer, but that wastes time and maybe throws off the energy. And now these guys are smoking and joking and laughing and getting tired and digesting and all this. And he's getting aggravated, or he just says, fuck it, let's just go in there and record because he doesn't want to be holding everyone else up. But now he hasn't eaten. Now he's
in a bad
aggravated.
mood, possibly. Yeah.
Yes. All these things. And the thing of that is, it's about, again, your attention to detail and caring about small things, which is a lot of what the recording process is. Because listen, if you're trusting me, I don't care if you're a professional or not, but if you're trusting me with your art and potentially your career, potentially your livelihood, but definitely your art and your passion, you need to trust me that everything's happening the way it should be, that we're capturing the best that we can capture. And you might be going through $100,000 worth of equipment on your way into tape. You know, if I can't trust you to master the art of ham and cheese hold the mayo, how can I trust you
Yeah,
with
exactly.
this $100,000 signal chain and whatever? And then the pot of coffee is, who doesn't like a good cup of coffee? And if the other guys are ones that all pay attention to the details and they clean the bathroom well and they get the food order right, I want the guy who makes the good pot of coffee with a smile on his face and the good attitude. It's as simple as that, because the good attitude will get you in there. It's very often not what, like I would tell people when they interned, don't try and impress me by telling me how much you know. Impress me by telling me what great questions you ask. So I think that's, that mentality is the advice there, is like, ask great questions. All the typical things that we've heard throughout our whole lives. Don't be the smartest person in the room. Surround yourself by people that know more, are hardworking, they're like-minded, they may have a talent or a skill that you don't have. Learn from them. Try and be around them and get better. And there is no ceiling at that point. The ceiling is whatever you decide for yourself. It's very often self-imposed. But if you can look past that, really there's no limitation if you're willing to do the work.
Yeah, I mean, and definitely the attention to detail. I mean, that obviously applies to just about everything that you would do in your life, but especially in this field. And, I remember a few experiences. I guess this was maybe out at Coachella. This is one of the first big jobs I'd had out of the state.
Right.
And, we had a couple guys on the crew that were runners, and we would say, hey, look, these people, they need this, this, and this. And they'd go to the store and they would buy the chips that they wanted, that they personally wanted, not what they got asked. And it's like, in what scenario did you think that this was going to help? But it was one of those moments where I realized, wow, paying attention to detail is that is an uncommon thing. It's like in the same way that common sense, we expect common sense to be common, but it's not common. It's typically rare to find in certain situations. But I mean, especially with this kind of work, the attention to detail and pride in doing what you're doing. That's a great point about, I'm not above this. And I feel like definitely with the people that we work in live events, not so much the people I worked with in the recording industry in Nashville, that was very much elitist. There were certain people who were clearly, I'm not going to do this job. Right. But I didn't like working with those people.
Right.
And another reason why I found myself in these different fields is because I love a team effort. And I love nothing more than having a team where everyone gives a shit and everyone is buttoning up whatever they're responsible for. There's a special synergy and you can tell it. Like, you walk onto a festival site and the crew ain't there. It's like,
right.
Man, this is going to be hard. This is going to be a real hard couple of days, isn't it?
Yeah, that's something I say a lot too when people ask me about, why this versus something else for my career. It's, even though music is the aspect that I do is very often something I'll pursue in a room by myself and then send it out to somebody. The thing I like about music is the communal part about it. I like being on a team and being a part of a team, but an important part of a team, but still just another part of the team. And, ideally I want to be on the winning team. So it's nice to be able to be on the team. And there's merits to being on the losing team too. That's great sometimes also for its own reasons. But being on the winning team is fun. It's fun to finish up a great festival that went great. And you asked me about my entry into it, and I mentioned to you that, when I helped out the first time just as a last minute fill in, that I didn't even, get paid for that. I didn't ask to get paid for that. It was strictly just to help my cousin who needed someone last minute. That the golf cart drivers especially on-site golf cart drivers, is one of the entry paths into this industry that is no background necessary, no skill set necessary, just behave. So, in a lot of cases, they're, I won't say looked down on by people, but maybe just less appreciated or not even as noticed as they could be by some people. Well, I've done that job. So I try to make sure that I always show a certain level of appreciation to the drivers as well. I've cleaned the toilet. I'm willing to do that job. Like, there's no job that I'm above. Not that I've done all of the jobs, but any of the jobs that I haven't done, it's not because I wasn't willing to, because I thought I was above it. It may be something I didn't have the skill set for, just something that, I wasn't hired for as my responsibility. And I do believe it's important to play your role and not overstep the boundaries that are appropriate in any given role. But it's like it's never because I'm too good for that job. I mean, if I wasn't doing this, if I couldn't figure out a way to pay my bills making music, I'll be the hardest working janitor if that's what I had to do to make my living. I'm not too good for any job. It's just the idea of that whatever it is that I do, I want to do it at a high level,
Well, and it's unique too, because in New York, everything is at a high level. Like, every single thing is at a high level. Right. It has to be. And there are definitely elements of when I came here where I didn't understand what that meant, because my experience was just, with Bonnaroo and maybe a couple like Christian artists playing at universities or auditoriums in Nashville. But it was one of those things where I was like, wow, even this unimportant thing that I think I'm doing, it's at, just by virtue of me being in New York, it's at a higher level. Rehearsals. I'd never really worked with bands and rehearsals, and I didn't understand that there was an entire infrastructure just for a band to be able to prepare their show to go on a bigger stage. I thought, of course, the band just knows this. They step on a big stage, doesn't matter how big the stage is, the lights are the same, it's just a different setting. But understanding that there's like this whole other thing that has to happen before they can headline at Madison Square Garden, and that there's a whole team of people there that need to be firing on all cylinders so that they can be prepared to go on the full display. I just think I consider myself incredibly fortunate to work with the people that we work with. And kind of like what you're saying, I think anyone that we've worked with would all clean the bathrooms. Yeah. And they'd have no problem with it. It's not a matter of pride. It is a matter of pride. I want to be proud of what I do, and I want the people here who I'm serving, I want them to feel good. And if they feel good, doesn't matter how hard I had to sweat or how much of my ass I had to break. That is the success to me. We're providing a good experience for the people in front of the fourth wall and the people behind the fourth wall. And nobody got hurt.
Right.
Nobody got hurt. I one of the things that's always really bothered me, and again, it's why I'm so appreciative that we have like the crew of people that we work with, is that none of us are dicks. None of us are dicks. No, I've seen so many people get chewed out for nothing. I've seen people leave the industry because of a terrible experience they had. And fortunately, even though we're all doing shit at literally the highest level in the capital of the world, we can all be humble and unified in the goal of like, nobody gets hurt, everybody gets paid, and everybody takes pride in whatever job they're working on. And I've seen you work a million jobs. I've definitely seen people who I thought should never work a job below a certain threshold happily assume that role because it's like, dude, they needed somebody and I was available and my friends are here. Why would I not want to come do this?
Right. I'm getting paid to go do this thing that I'm watching 100,000 other people spend all their hard-earned money to do.
Yeah, right. Everyone else that's coming here has to pay for this. And I am lucky enough to be getting paid to be here. Yes, I'm doing my work, but I don't know. It's just like a very, it's one thing to do events. It's another thing to do events in New York. And I just really love that the people here doing shit at the highest level have, I don't know. It's just like there's the human element.
Yeah.
And there's,
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
You're making me think of a good story that I think you'll appreciate.
No, let's hear it.
That kind of it bridges all the lines. I mean, shit, it talks about how you mentioned earlier with me being one of the people that gets to see both sides of the creative part in the studio and then seeing it come to life on stage. And it really touches on the hardworking and there being no job that's beneath anybody that actually cares. So Redman is, like I said, not only somebody I work with, but like family to me. For years, man, he used to always say, you know what, every summer when I would start doing festivals, like, man, when are you going to let me drive one of them golf carts for you? I said, Doc, I would love to have you come drive a golf cart for us. That'd be amazing. But the thing is, if you came, you'd have to actually work. We don't have extra golf carts sitting around just for people to go have fun with. You'd have to actually work because that'd be taking away a cart from another driver. So, man, come on. That's what I want to do. I want to. So years, man, he was saying this. And then one year, eventually, I was just like, after maybe 3 years of saying it, 4 years of saying it, I was like, bro, why don't you come down and just do it for a day and work? And his answer to me, because I knew he was in town, he wasn't on tour at the time. He says, do I get to have a radio? And I said, get to have one. I said, you need it. And you need to answer it because like I said, you're going to need to actually work. We don't have enough golf carts. I'm like, me and other people are going to be calling you, sending you to go pick, random people up, and you have to just drive them to and from on your golf cart, and you have to answer the radio and shit. He's like, fuck it, I'll do it. He said, I want to do it for a day. So he comes out and is a golf cart driver. And it was incredible. And he ended up being the best golf cart driver that we had there. So much so that he took it so seriously and was great. Treated everybody great. He wore something over his face way before COVID era. So he wore something over his face that most people didn't even realize who it was at first until maybe they heard him talking. So I want to say it was the second year he came back to do it at Govball. Wu-Tang happens to be performing on my stage that I'm artist liaison for. So I'm working with Wu-Tang throughout the day. I already know most of the guys and have worked with most of the guys in the studio. Method Man's a friend at this point, and the management I'm friends with and whatever. So Wu's on stage. Red comes to drive the golf cart. They have no idea that he's going to be there. This wasn't like a pre-planned thing, but then they hear he's there. They decide, okay, well, since you're here anyway, why don't you hop on stage and do a song with us? So Wu-Tang's on the main stage at Govball. Red pulls up his golf cart to the bottom of the stairs, comes up the stairs. I'm side stage with Red. He hands me his walkie-talkie. He hands me his glasses, gets the microphone, goes out there on stage. The crowd goes bananas. Kills, I think he did the Rockwilder with Method Man.
Amazing.
You know, in the middle of Wu-Tang set. Crowd goes bananas. This is in New York, so everybody, of course, is,
Everyone knows what's up.
appreciative.
Yeah.
Yes. Comes back to the side stage, starts grabbing his shit from me, and I'm like, man, you killed that, bro. I pound him up, I'm giving him back his radio, his glasses. He's like, yeah, thanks, bro, but I gotta run. I gotta go pick up Childish Gambino real quick at the other stage. Books it down the stairs, hops right on his golf cart, and boom, right over to pick up his scheduled pickup at the other stage for his golf cart driving job, which he, of course, declined payment for, even though they always tried to insist on paying him. He would never take any, he would never take any money from them, of course. But it's like, it's all encompassing to what we've been talking about, right? It's like you get to see the personal side, the human side, but the work side as well. I get to see the artistic side and stuff, people that I'm working with in the studio also being appreciated in real time by the audience. And this person who's just now performed on stage for these 50,000 people in the crowd and just tore the roof off the place is now like, I did that part already. Now the most important thing on my plate is making sure that I get my golf cart to where I promised someone I'd be on time. So it doesn't matter where you're at in the industry as far as, you know, how we perceive the levels of, you know, the totem pole or where you are in success or level of importance for this event or anything. It's like, if all pieces aren't working, guess what? I don't care how great the stage manager is. I don't care how great the SIR rep is. I don't care how great the crew one guys are. If the golf cart drivers don't get the artist to the stage,
show.
Now we don't have a show because the fans didn't come to see what a great job we can do building the stage and how awesome the LD is at firing off the lights and shit. Like they don't care about any of that if there's not their artist on stage to perform. And without the driver, the artist isn't getting to the stage. Without the catering people, the artist isn't happy when they get to the stage because they're hungry. Every part of it matters. It all matters. And no part of it is the one that, without us, we'd really have a problem, right, but everybody else we can do without. No, all the pieces matter. And if it is any of those parts where it's, this one doesn't matter so much, well, the industry's grown so much in the past 10 years that, as you've seen, for the most part, those pieces of fat have been trimmed off of the equation. Yeah. In department wise, not just in individual wise. If there's unnecessary things that they were doing, a lot of that now has been trimmed. It's not the early days where there was just a handful of festivals. So it was really, they went all out on every little thing to entertain the artists backstage as much as the fans in the house. Now it's a little more streamlined in that department, and the unnecessary shit has been cut. So all the pieces there, they all matter. All the work is. If one piece of that chain breaks, the chain is no good.
I always loved Redman. I always respected him as an artist. But I remember the first year I showed up to work at Gov Ball and I saw him driving a fucking golf cart. I was like, that is the realest motherfucker I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah.
It really, that you're totally right. It does completely exemplify what we're talking about.
Bro, his one of his close brothers, Method Man, he fucking lost his mind when he heard that Red was there driving a golf cart. He's like, the one year, Eminem was there.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, tell the story. Please tell the story.
Yeah, so we go back to say hello to Eminem. Red is M's favorite rapper, and when we go back there, it ends up being me, 50 Cent, Eminem, and Redman having a conversation, and Dallas Sermon was there too, Eric Sermon's daughter, and we're having a conversation and. It's on video somewhere too, where I'll see if I can send you the video. Where Eminem at some point he looks, he's like, "Wait, he's driving a fucking golf cart?" he can't comprehend this. But yeah, so it's just amazing. Like there's this human appreciation of it, and then at the end of M's show headlining Gov Ball that year. He shouted out to, I know somewhere on a golf cart around this place is Redman. Shouts out to his favorite rapper, Redman. But yeah, it's just again, same thing. It's just about, hey, I'm here to do a job, and it's not like a knock at his pride that he's driving the golf cart. Like every artist who hears that, they usually follow up with, "Oh, can I drive a golf cart sometime too?" The thing is that there's an understanding that Red realizes it's not something that you're coming to do as a goof. Like the goof factor of it is a cool extra bonus where the festival gets some cool footage out of it, and they get like a cool moment out of it, and the fans and the artists get a cool moment out of it potentially. But the truth is, for Red, the value of it is learning and having the experience of understanding. He's been in the industry for so long and been a part of it for so long, but that he was in the area he's in. A lot of people don't realize how many other aspects go into it that they don't understand or haven't experienced firsthand with the mentality of, I want to learn this, that he wanted to learn how to make it happen and all the pieces from the ground up so he can have his own festival one day potentially, or so if he, whatever. So he just has that knowledge to deploy however he wants to deploy it. So a lot of people will hear him say that, other artists, and they'll be, oh, I want to do it. The truth is most of them wouldn't really want to do it, or they would take it as a goof and they'd do it for an hour and then they'd disappear. And even in that hour, it would still be kind of a goof. It's not like I'm going to be able to get them on the radio to come back and be right where after the first 5 minutes when the novelty wears off, they don't necessarily want somebody barking orders at them about, hey, come here and do this and whatever, especially when you're in those high stress moments in a festival that sometimes, not that the manners disappear, but that maybe things are said a little bit more, a little less, with a little less consideration towards somebody else. And it's a little more sense of urgency that you're putting into it, that, they don't want to hear that shit. And they're not going to hear that shit. Red went into this understanding, no, I'm actually going into work because I want to do this job and I want to learn how to do this job and I want to do it well. So. Yeah,
easily top performer. Of all and this not shitting on any of the other golf cart drivers, but he was easily a top performer.
No, and he was a top performer because, again, it's nothing against the other drivers, like you said. He was a top performer because he knew going into it that people were going to expect it, that he was just being a goof. So he went with the mentality of, if somebody calls on the radio, I'm going to try and be the first one to respond. Because that's usually how it works with the drivers. If you're looking for an available driver, just hop on the radio. Any available driver, golf cart drivers, to make a pickup from wherever. And somebody will pop on, maybe after 10 seconds, maybe after 30 seconds. It depends how busy they are, if they heard it, whatever. He just made it his a point that if he heard that radio call, that he would do his best to answer it and do his best to be available to help as much as he could. Because otherwise he's just sitting around, and he could have done that on his couch. He didn't need to. It's not like he came to watch the show. He doesn't care about going to the show. If he wanted to watch the show, he could have gone to the show to watch the show without any cost or headache to him at all. But it wasn't about that. It was about learning this job,
Yeah, that honestly, that is one of the most epic things. I mean, we've seen a lot of crazy stuff at shows, a lot of like random people coming in, hanging out backstage. But that is definitely that takes the cake as like one of the funniest things I've ever witnessed behind a stage,
For sure. People lost their minds. They loved it so much.
Well, my favorite part was how he would like get artists on the golf carts and he'd be talking to them and they would have no clue. And then he'd drop the mask right before they got on stage and they'd be like, what?
Yes.
What?
That happened a few times for sure.
Who else is here driving people around on golf carts? Like, what is going on?
You know what he said too is he did an interview about it. I think it was at the Meadows Festival. Somebody interviewed him about it, that he was there driving. And he said, I wear the mask. And the thing is, y'all deal with a lot of funkiness from people when they don't know who you are. He said, when I drop the mask and they see I'm Redman, it's crazy how much some of the attitudes change and everything. But it's like they take you as just you may as well be the golf cart. You're just this machine to do the job, as opposed to having an appreciation for the person. So it's also cool, I think, that he was, willing and interested to see that other side of it too, as just a normal employee, as opposed to, again, trying to remove the novelty aspect of Redman on a golf cart to actually be in the element. He saw a different side of it.
A contributing member of the team. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. The Eminem story was so cool too, because wasn't there like a thing where they had tried to meet so many times in the past, but they were just like two ships passing in the night?
No, they'd met many times, but Eminem has a picture from when he was, I think, his first time in New York, going over at Red's house where.
Oh wow.
Where we, where we still work. It's where the Cribs episode was, the famous Cribs episode. He still has that place. We still, we have the studio in there. We work out of there. Eminem has like a picture through a dirty car window of that place, just as like, oh, I'm at Redman's house. And it's not even a picture of Red or Eminem. It's just M's picture of the house itself.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, they've met each other many times. They just hadn't seen each other in quite a while. And M is, he's a huge fan of Red's music. That's one of the things with the recording and production side of things for me, is that like, I know that people that I'm a fan of are going to hear my work. And so I guess that's one of the fears, going back to that, where
the pressure's on. Yeah.
I know that whether I want them to or not, there's a time where as a recording engineer, you want big people to hear you and know you exist and give you a chance. I'm in a position now with certain projects anyway, that there isn't a question of I ideally want. So I know that Dre's going to hear it. Snoop's going to hear it. M's going to hear it. All the people that I like are going to hear it, in hip hop. Cause Redman, within the industry is extremely well respected and appreciated. Yeah. And, he's somebody that, people know also for being a human being and not on too much Hollywood bullshit. Which is probably a big part of the reason why him and I get along so well, is because we both have similar mentalities, that the essence of the human is the part that matters a lot more than the accolades. But yeah, so he, I forget where I was even going with that, but,
well, it really just speaks to, again, like you're saying, the human element. That industry, that gets lost a lot. There aren't a lot of humans. There are people who are alive in that industry, but not many of them are human. And what you were talking about right before then was the pressure.
Right, with the pressure of everyone here. Yeah, exactly. Like, and that's the thing with working, especially on that project with him, and him being respected with that human side of it. People are going to listen, and people I'm a fan of are going to listen. So my fear is like, hey, what if Dr. Dre thinks my work sucks? And then I guess the calm comes from after realizing, like, I don't really worry about whether or not Eminem likes it or not, or Dre likes it or not, in the sense of critiquing my work. I'm just worried about the artist I'm working with like it. If Red likes it, if I'm happy with it and it goes out there, then great. And I hope it's well received, but I think that they as artists know that, it is, like I said earlier, a service industry, that we're trying to help bring the best out of the artist. So it's like, I just know that it's going to happen instead of worrying about it happening at this point in my career. But there is that knowledge that, look, it's getting heard, and every potential thing that you second guessed or as confident as you felt about something, now it's no longer yours to determine anymore. It's out there for the world to critique. And part of that world includes people that you may have a ton of admiration and respect for their work. So there is that pressure of hopefulness that people will appreciate the work that you do. But, yeah, I mean, at the end of it, I guess it's just about making sure that you present something you're really proud of at that point. So when the Dr. Dre's and the Snoops and the Eminems all do hear it, that hopefully they are appreciative of the work, and they do say, hey, who is that? Who mixed this? Who worked on this? Because at the end of the day, they're going to hear it. They're going to hear it. But yeah, Eminem, to your question, they definitely had hung out, but that time he was very excited to see Red. It had been a long time, and the conversation they had was amazing. But he just, I'll try and get you the video. Like I said, he lost his mind that Red was driving a golf cart.
I love it, dude. That's honestly, that is easily in the top 3, like, most hilarious experiences behind stage.
It was amazing.
It was that just watching that all play out was so cool. The other thing I want to make sure we get in here before we wrap up is, of the crazy list of stuff that you have been a part of, what are the goals? Like in your utopian scenario of you accomplish all your goals, like what are the other things you hope to check off as you continue on these paths? Like you've already done so many things. What are some other like golden opportunities, or like if it came across your plate, you would drop anything to do it?
I mean, there's a lot of artists I'm a fan of that I'd like to work with for sure, but the truth is my big goal is just to stay in demand, to keep working. And, by the time, especially in the recording space of it, by the time the world gets to hear it, I've already done my part, and it's already been something we spent a lot of time on, and, potentially put an incredible amount of time into, and are already, it may have even sat for a while after we did our time before it makes it out to the public. So by the time it's heard, I'm already kind of on to the next thing, I guess. So for me, it's not as exciting. Like, it's exciting to talk about the things, but it's more of like a thinking back on it. I'm most excited about the next thing. I don't know exactly what the next thing may be, and that's part of what's exciting about it. I don't necessarily, as much as I love certain artists, I don't necessarily want to make everybody's next record who I'm already a fan of, because they're already established. I'm more excited about helping find the first of a next thing, somebody who we don't know yet, who's incredible and unique and tells their story in such a cool way that I just relate to it and that the world appreciates it. I just want to stay in demand and stay busy and stay excited, hopefully, and just be able to work on things that, like I said, that don't make me want to say no to them. I think that, I don't think there isn't like this specific ideal scenario. And in my work life, I would like to be able to do that with added balance of work and family. I have the luxury of being able to work from my home studio quite a bit where I'm at now. So I get to spend a lot of time with my family and my kids. But there's also the parts of it where I have to be gone, or even if I'm working at the home studio, if I'm really locked in, where, I may be up here for 14, 16 hours a day.
Yeah. Deep in it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to be able to balance things with work and family more, because, as great as the accomplishments can be for anybody in any field, they're in large part only as good as the people you get to share them with and the people who you get to appreciate them with. So, of course, I'd like to make bigger records and have more number ones and all the awards and the accolades and all the shit like that. But, most importantly, I'd like to keep a roof over my head. I'd like to keep the lights on. I'd like to make my kids proud. I'd like to be able to enjoy and help them in developing through their lives and growing up with active involvement, as opposed to just paying the bill for it, and being a part of their trajectory and see them do cooler shit of their own,
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as in music specifically, man, I want to find the next. I just always want to find the next
You
thing.
want to help someone blaze new territory. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like to help people create their voice. I mean, look, I'm old enough. We're all old enough by the time we're probably 20 years old that you can't tell us any more new stories. We've heard all the stories, I already know that one. It's a rerun. What you can do, though, is put such a unique vision and spin on it, and express this story in a way that's so uniquely your own, or this concept in a way that's so uniquely your own, that it maybe affects me differently, or it elicits a different response from me and different emotions out of me, that I can appreciate it in a different way. And so that's what I'm after. It's like, I love Kendrick Lamar, for example. I think he's a great artist.
Genius, yeah.
I'd love to work on a Kendrick record. But I'm not interested in finding the next Kendrick. Because if I want to listen to Kendrick Kendrick does a pretty good job of being Kendrick, and I'll listen to him do it. I don't need to hear your version of Kendrick. I am curious though to hear your version of you, and that done on a bigger scale, or in an escalated or elevated version of that, or the character that you develop as your artist or something like that. That's different to me and potentially special. And I understand the building and borrowing of elements from people that inspire you. That I appreciate and that I'm totally behind. I just don't like the idea of trying to be the next somebody. I like art to be art, and somebody who's using their artistic expression.
Well, I mean that I completely agree with that too. I definitely say most of the bands that I would consider like the pinnacle, or artists in general that I would consider the pinnacle of creation, are the bands that sound so different. I might not even own all their records, but I know as soon as I hear that song, it's that band. That to me is what draws me into a band, is when they, or again, any musical artist, that's probably the hardest part, especially within the industry. But, those are, the reason Redman can continue to release music is because no one sounds like Redman. Redman is unique.
Right. And he was from a generation where it was important to be unique, where people didn't want to sound like the next somebody, because then you were jacking someone's style.
100%.
Now it's almost something that's more, I guess, where there's the commercial money into it, they put more money behind those things because they feel like it's already a proven entity now. So if you do a version of that now, and the business plays into it that way. But, from his era, like you said, it's he sounds like him alone because they had to.
Well, and there aren't many people from his era that are still doing it at any level, much less at the level that he is. That's why, because he's always been unique. He's always cultivated his own sound. His records were their own type of hip hop experience.
Sure.
That's why it lasts. That's why people continue to want to hear it, because there's nothing else like it. I know within 3 seconds of this person rapping that it's Redman, and that is the thing that would draw me, and it's the thing again that draws me into. I keep saying bands because again, it's my initial experience of this is a band like Deftones. I love the Deftones. Yes. The Deftones is only able to survive 30 years after they started because they've always just done their own thing. In the early 2000s, they got lumped in with nu metal, but they weren't nu metal. They were their own thing, and they always evolved and changed in a way that was unique with them. That's the only way they're able to stay relevant, is because they just remain true to that. That to me is the real artistry of art. I remember when I lived in Nashville, again, that place is music business city. It's not music city, it's music business city. And I remember I think this was Vance Powell, and we were just chilling, and I worked at this place that was right next to his studio, and he would always come over, we'd go over there, and he was telling me this, he was telling a group of us this story, and he's like, when I was doing live sound, or one of my bands was touring, we were talking to a music business person in the early 2000s, and this music business person was seriously trying to tell him the only thing that's going to happen in music going forward is boy bands. And that's the early 2000s. Like, it had already started to die.
Right.
But the music business person was so convinced that, well, it sold this many last year, so it's going to sell this many this year. And frankly, people are not that dumb. And people all the artists and musical acts that have 30-year careers are artists who deliberately do things differently. And those are the artists that labels and music business people typically don't want to take a gamble on. They want to take a gamble on a safe bet. Well, this person sounds like this. They wrote music for this person and this person, so their music's going to sell in a comparable way to how those other people's music sold. But again, like, dude, Deftones, Radiohead, they've been bands for 30, 40 years.
Yeah, and the reason
every
the
point
reason those
somebody
artists,
was like, this isn't going to sell. This isn't going to last,
Right, but then the key word there they use is artists. Though they're all artists. They're all truly artists. They're not they're not pumping out cogs from the factory. They're not making, something, oh, this is what this record label needs. They're expressing something that this is what I need to express. And that's where the art comes from. And the boy band thing, it's nothing against those guys or any of that. It's just, that's a different product. That's, and that may be a little closer to cogs than some of the other forms of artistic expression.
Well, and people, for as much as any music business person wants to undermine the delicate sensibilities of the people that consume music, people aren't that stupid, and they'll quickly realize, like, this is just a rehash. I don't want to hear a rehash. This was fun for a couple years, but I need something different. I need something new. And I've always, like, that mentality was pervasive in Nashville. Like, oh, well, last year, this person sold this many records. So if we sign this person who sounds just like them, they're going to sell the same amount of records. Right. And again, just people are not that stupid. People are not that gullible, and
exactly. And it happens in every version of entertainment. I mean, you have one good vampire movie, then there's going to be 30 vampire movies next year.
You have one good superhero movie, and then you have a whole decade of MCU.
Yeah, and maybe that's the exception to the rule, the MCU ones, because they're all pretty successful. But the truth is, they're all under that same umbrella of these same established characters. So maybe they are more like the one group. But the million other zombie shows that aren't The Walking Dead, most of them come and go. It's not that all of a sudden people only care about zombies. It's that they like this one, this expression, this one show, this one program. Same with the art. It's like, if a boy band is great, it doesn't mean all boy bands are going to be great. It means they liked them. They liked them for whatever reason they liked them. Maybe it was great marketing. Maybe it was the right songs. Maybe it was the right
personalities. Yeah, exactly.
There's a bunch of factors, but it doesn't mean automatically they're all going to like that. It's, you got to still keep the art in the art industries,
Well, dude, I want to thank you so much for coming on here and spending 2 hours just like chopping it up, the real nitty gritty details of art and creation. I just want to kind of turn this over to you for a minute, and I want you to speak to the people who maybe haven't started or are struggling with finding their way, blazing their own path. You've been incredibly successful just by following what is passionate. And I'm just hoping maybe you can impart some words of inspiration to people who may be listening to this, who are on the fence or are thinking about doing something but are afraid to take the plunge and commit the time and energy into themselves and their passion.
Sure, man. I would just say, don't be scared of the gap between you and them. They had the same distance when they started between their current success as you do. And, any lack of talent or natural ability or self-confidence can be usually overcome with a lot of hard work and, just keeping your head down and staying busy and working hard, but most importantly, doing it with the right attitude. People, in a recording studio or in a high pressure situation, like working in a festival or being on a tour bus, you're spending an incredible, unnatural amount of time in very close quarters with people, working in stressful situations. Be somebody that they want to be in the room with, be somebody that you would want to be in the room with, and be fair to yourself, but don't be scared of being critical and don't be scared of finding that gap between where you are and where you want to be. That's a big part of what I think helped my career, is that I would look for areas where, I felt like, even in a technical sense, where I didn't like the way certain elements sounded of a mix, I would listen for that gap of what I really need to improve at and realize where it really sucked. But by doing that, I was able to address it, acknowledge it, and work towards fixing it to where I turned those weaknesses into some of my stronger points in a lot of cases. So be aware of the gap and work through the gap, and, just keep putting the time and effort in and do it with the right attitude. And, as I've said before, you're only ever one good decision away from changing the rest of your life for the better. one good decision. That's it. That's it. One good thing that happens the right way for you, and all of your tomorrows are different. So don't worry about the struggles of today as being the infinite be-all, end-all of your career. They're just what's establishing you with the foundation of what your career can eventually become.
Love that. Words of wisdom from a true sage. We wish you nothing but continued success as you continue to blaze your own path here in these industries. I want to tell everyone to go stream Redman's new record. Give Josh some love. Make sure you rate it and leave some good comments. Keep those numbers high. Keep it high on the charts. And thank you again for coming on here and chatting with me. We've never gotten to do this. We've known each other for 10 years, and we have never gotten a chance to sit down unfiltered for 2 hours and have a conversation. So
thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it, man. It was a great time, and I'm looking forward to working again this summer, brother.
We're going to do it, man. All right, dude, this has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. We're out of here. Like, subscribe, check us out on all the socials, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Hey!
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva. That's obnoxious. Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva. Literally no one cares. For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod. When will this end? Thank you for listening. Now get back to work. Move it along, buddy.